Tsavo Reserve, late afternoon. A thin haze of dust hung in the stillness. The heat had begun to drop, but the air clung to the land with a dry weight. From the west rise, just past the termite mounds, an elephant was making her way toward the outer water post. The movement itself wasn't unusual. Elephants crossed this stretch often, but this one was alone. She was not thirsty. She did not drink. She moved with a patience that suggested neither urgency nor routine. Her steps were slow but unwavering, each one deliberate, carving a path over land she seemed to recognize. She passed the trough without pausing and kept walking until she reached the faded perimeter line where the bush thinned. Her head lowered for a moment, not in submission but in recognition. Then she stood still, not watchful, simply waiting. Just inside the field office fence, Ranger Caleb turned from his note log. He had heard no call, no alert, no thunder of herd movement. He looked past the brush, following the half-worn trail that connected the grazing lines. There, past the post where older salt blocks had once been placed, she stood. He raised his binoculars, then slowly lowered them. "She's not here for water," he said quietly. The others joined him. The elephant remained, unmoving. Her body bore the thick folds of maturity, the skin weathered but not aged. A patch of dried mud clung to her shoulder. Her ears flicked once, slowly. Her tail did not sway. There was no sign of alarm, yet something felt distinctly out of pattern. Caleb took a few steps forward, careful not to signal threat or approach. The last of the light angled across her face, casting a soft dullness across her cheek and temple. And then he saw it. The small nick above her left eye. Not recent. Old. He stepped back. "I've seen her before," he murmured. The others didn't respond. They waited. The elephant did too. She had not moved since crossing the trough. Her body language showed neither fear nor ease. Just presence. She shifted her front foot once, lifting the toes slightly before settling back into place. Over the radio, the gate team confirmed no herd had crossed from the south since morning. No others were logged near this path. She had come alone. And by her age, she had come far. Still she stood. Wind picked up slightly from the east, carrying the scent of dry acacia and the faint copper of earth. Birds changed roost in the thickets behind the office. Time passed. The elephant made no attempt to graze. No dust bath, no vocalization. Caleb walked back inside and pulled an old record book from the metal shelf. Page by page, he flipped through names they had once given to calves during the drought seasons, most long gone or untracked. Then he stopped. Nyoka. 5 years ago, a calf no older than 2 had been found collapsed beside this same path, dehydrated and orphaned. She had been treated on site for 19 days before a mobile unit relocated her to Ithumba. No transponder had been added. No follow-up ever confirmed her survival. He closed the book and walked back out. The elephant was still there. Her eyes followed him now, but her head did not lift. Her trunk moved slightly, not in curiosity, not in fear, just a quiet arc, brushing the earth once and stopping. If this was Nyoka, she had returned not out of memory, but out of need. If she was wounded, no sign showed yet, but she was not here by chance, and if she had walked this far alone, something was waiting behind her still. The wind had settled by the time she reached the edge of the clearing. Long shadows crossed the worn path that separated bush from station, and the sounds of movement inside the reserve faded to a still hum. Distant birds, soft insects, nothing else. The elephant had not wandered. She had come straight, without pause or deviation, and now she stood where no wild elephant usually lingered. Her ears moved once, folding back and forward with a slow control, then settled. Caleb stepped forward again. He said nothing. The others stayed behind, waiting. His gait was slow, his arms at his sides. The elephant didn't back away. Her eyes followed him in small shifts, not locked, not rigid, watchful, but not uncertain. Her trunk was raised just slightly, hovering near the earth, unmoving. Her body showed no signs of aggression or retreat, just quiet presence. He stopped a few meters away, keeping the same respectful space they had always kept with those they'd once handled. She took one step forward, pressing her front pad down hard enough to disturb the dry surface. Her head dipped, then rose again. Caleb felt something old stir behind his ribs. She was taller now, older, but the slope of the back, the line of the ears, it was her. In the early drought years, they'd pulled nearly a dozen calves from the bone-dry basins south of the ridge. Most had been moved quickly before they could bond or decline, but one calf had resisted everything: feeding, standing, hydration. That one had collapsed 3 times before the team figured out the right feeding angle. Caleb had slept beside her enclosure, not to tame her, only to ensure she didn't tip into silence in the night. He whispered, "Nayoka." Her trunk shifted slightly, then settled again. Behind him, the team monitored quietly. There was no sign of recent injury. No blood, no pronounced limp. But she had walked here without a herd. She had made her way through line corridors, dry lands, and human zones alone. And now she stood facing the ranger who had once kept her alive with soaked cloth and crushed roots. Something was wrong. If it wasn't visible, it was close. She did not vocalize. She did not step further, but her body began to lean. A slight weight shift, her right shoulder lowering, her left foot bracing. Then, slowly, she sank onto her front knees. Not collapsing, but placing herself there with care. The gesture was not surrender. It was endurance. A signal not of fear, but of need. Caleb crouched, hands on his thighs. He didn't move closer. Her breath was steady but deep. The muscles along her side fluttered once, then stilled. From behind, the youngest ranger whispered, "She's waiting for something." They didn't know yet what, but she hadn't come to remember. She had come because this was the last place she knew where help did not hurt. If she had walked this far in silence, something was following, or left behind. If she could no longer stand soon, intervention would be required. If they acted too fast, she would flee and worsen whatever was hidden beneath the surface. If they waited too long, they might miss the only moment when trust could still carry weight. So they waited with her. Evening light caught the dry hairs along her flank. A breeze picked up. Somewhere in the bush behind them, something else shifted but did not emerge. The risk remained unspoken but understood. She had not come alone. The distance between them had become still air. She remained low to the ground, folded in the way elephants do when rest is no longer a choice but a necessity. Her breath rose slowly beneath the ridges of her ribs, and every few minutes her trunk stirred the dust, as if checking the scent beneath her own weight. The others had stepped back now, quietly returning to the fence line, leaving Caleb in the wide, hushed gap between the past and what lay under her skin now. He did not speak again. Not at first. The weight of 5 years settled behind his sternum, not as memory, but as certainty. There were things you forget in this work, faces, days, even rescues that blur with time. But there were some you didn't. Nayoka had been found barely standing, crusted with salt and cracked earth, no older than 2. Her mother had not been located. No fresh carcass, no trail. Just that calf, skeletal and swaying, too weak to resist when lifted into the canvas sling. Caleb had been part of the night watch. 19 days of feeding her with soaked leaves, crushed pods, hand-mixed solution when she refused the bottle. She had collapsed more than once, her legs sliding out beneath her, and each time they thought she was near the end. But each time, she opened one eye. Not wide, just enough. That look stayed with him. It wasn't recognition, it wasn't fear, it was refusal to leave. He had called her Nyoka because she'd slithered forward the first night when they thought she'd gone still. A name meant for memory, not reunion. Now she rested again in front of him, the sun low behind her spine. Her left flank trembled once, hard, then stopped. Caleb stepped forward, closing the space between them until he could crouch to her eye level. She didn't shift, didn't lift her trunk, just blinked once, slowly. He watched the flutter in her shoulder muscle and the faint swelling around her rear joint. Still no open wound, but her entire frame radiated something internal, something working beneath the surface, quiet but relentless. If she stood again, she might worsen it. If she stayed too long, infection or heat collapse would overtake whatever strength remained. If she fled, the outcome would turn final. Caleb knelt in the dirt, his hands pressed to his knees, and watched her without movement. In her face, in the small wrinkled fold just under her right eye, he saw the same dull glaze that calves wore when exhaustion walked closest. "You've come back," he said softly. She blinked again, and her ears shifted once, just once. It wasn't for reunion. It wasn't for comfort. She was asking something. Behind him, someone approached and stopped. A cloth, soaked in clean water, was handed silently. Caleb took it, held it low, and let her scent it first. Her trunk did not reach, but her nostrils flared. He set the cloth on the ground between them. She made no move toward it, but a sound emerged, barely audible. A breath pushed with a low, broken tone. She had not come for herself. Caleb stood again and scanned the brush beyond her resting shape. He stepped wide, moving carefully around her, not toward her face, but her rear. And there, behind the crest of her spine and curled close beneath her side, he saw it. A calf. Still. No sound, no movement. He stopped breathing. If the calf was gone, she would not stay. But she hadn't left. If the calf was alive, even barely, this was the only place it might survive. He stepped back into her view. Her eyes found him again. Nothing had changed, nothing moved, but now everything was different. She rose with effort. The motion was not sudden, but it was not smooth either. Her front legs pressed first, steady and slow, but when her rear followed, the shift was uneven. Her right leg slipped once in the dust before catching, and she held herself there, stiff and wide. A pulse of stillness followed, her body recalibrating, weight balanced, breath measured. Caleb watched her closely. She had concealed it until now, but whatever carried her here was no longer hiding. Her right side trembled beneath the surface. Not a shiver from cold or fear, but a rhythmic, internal quiver, as if a muscle somewhere deep inside was folding under strain. The team remained silent. The air around them held a strange tension, not the kind that warned of danger, but of something fragile held barely upright. The calf still hadn't moved. It lay behind her, tucked close to the space where her shadow fell, partially shielded from view. If she had given birth recently, and every sign pointed that way, there were many risks. Hemorrhage, shock, internal injury. A retained placenta could kill her quietly in a matter of hours. If the calf was alive, it would need help within minutes, not hours. But if either were touched too soon, instinct could turn trust to fear. Caleb stepped forward a single pace. Nyoka didn't flinch. Her ears lifted slightly, the right one pausing mid-rotation. He crouched low again, watching the line of her ribs. The swelling was clearer now, along the back of her abdominal wall, not sharp but broad. The skin around it pulsed once with shallow breath. He whispered, "You're hurting." Her eyes shifted, only slightly, not in recognition, not in defiance, just in presence. He kept low and walked the long curve of her side, staying wide. From the angle he could see the edge of the calf's flank. Still no movement, still no breath he could count, but she was guarding it. Even in her condition, she had positioned herself between them. The risk was plain. If they intervened too fast, she might move and collapse. If she collapsed on the calf, recovery would be impossible. If they waited too long and the calf had not yet breathed, it would not survive the hour. He turned once and signaled to the edge of the field where a second ranger, Toma, had begun preparing the hydration cloth again. No tranquilizers, no injection kits, nothing that would break the unspoken line Nyoka had drawn in dust and blood. She shifted again. Her rear leg bent sharply at the joint, then caught itself. A soft sound left her mouth, barely audible, just air pressed from lungs. Not pain, not warning. A call, short, then silence. The calf stirred. Not a full movement, just the tip of its ear lifting and dropping once, then still again. But it had heard her. Caleb moved no closer. The sound was a message, not a request. She was not asking for them. She was asking the calf to try. Another tremble ran through her side. Caleb could see her weight shifting to the left, trying to carry what the right leg could no longer bear. If she walked now, she could rupture. If she stayed upright too long, her blood could turn. Everything was timed against her. The sun was dropping, brushing the horizon now in thin orange lines. A soft rustle moved through the nearby brush, dry leaves swaying once. Still no herd, still no sound beyond the quiet rhythm of her breathing and the small stir of air. She turned slightly, her hind legs pivoting half a step, allowing just enough space for what lay behind her to breathe freely. And, for the first time, the calf's chest lifted. Faint, but visible. Caleb didn't move. Neither did she. But they had both seen it. The light shifted lower, casting a long orange haze over the dust. Nyoka's legs wavered once more beneath her weight. Then, slowly, without collapse or resistance, she lowered herself to the earth. The motion was deliberate. Front first, then rear, one joint at a time. It was not the fall of an animal overcome. It was the surrender of one who had reached the place she meant to reach. No sound came from her mouth, no cry, no call. The silence was heavier than noise. Her body stretched slightly, the massive shoulders easing into the dry soil, ribs rising slower now, the rhythm shallow but steady. Caleb moved closer only when she had fully settled. He did not touch her. He did not speak. He knelt down beside her, just far enough that she would see him clearly but feel no threat. Her eyes shifted. Not closed, just softened by fatigue. The others stood further off. Even Toma, still holding the damp cloth, had paused mid-step, understanding the edge they now stood on. Intervention, if rushed, could snap the line of fragile trust. Waiting too long could cost both lives. The calf had moved again, only slightly. One leg twitched, then rested. Its skin bore the fine layer of afterbirth, now dry in patches. No wounds, no visible deformities. But it had not stood, not even once. Nyoka's breath changed, shorter now, uneven. Her flanks moved less with each cycle. Caleb counted them, 10 seconds between, then 11. Her body had spent itself getting here. He lowered his voice. "We're here." She blinked. Once. Slowly. The swelling in her right side looked unchanged, but her posture had shifted. Instead of guarding it, she had exposed it, as if showing them what they couldn't see before. The blood vessels beneath the skin had risen, faint but clear. Her gums, when visible beneath her trunk, had paled. Signs of internal bleeding were no longer distant. Caleb raised his hand once behind his back. No words. The signal was enough. 2 rangers moved behind the fence, collecting the kit. No tranquilizers still, no restraints. Just fluid packs, soft tubing, and a hand pump. If they touched her now, there was risk. If they didn't, she might not see another sunrise. She exhaled slowly. Her trunk curled inward, brushing her own shoulder. Not in fear, not in self-soothing, just resting. The calf stirred again. This time, a faint sound came with it. A low exhale, not a cry, just breath registering the cold. It moved its head, pressing its face against her belly. Not strong enough to rise, not yet. Caleb leaned forward slightly. The calf was breathing, but slow. No suckling attempts. Eyes partially open but unfocused. If it didn't feed within the hour, its strength would slip. If it attempted to stand too soon, it might break the bond entirely. He kept his voice soft. "Just hold on." Nyoka didn't respond. She didn't need to. She had brought them here, to this exact place, for this exact moment. Not for herself. The sky above them turned amber. The brush behind remained quiet. No distant herds. No movement in the wind. The air shifted once more, just enough to lift the dust from her back. Caleb stayed where he was, knees to the ground, hands resting in stillness. She had called for nothing, but her silence had spoken. And now the work began. The calf had not lifted its head. Not once. It lay curled against her side, half beneath her shoulder, its body slack in the dust. The folds of its skin were soft and damp in places, where the birth membrane had not yet dried. One leg twitched, but there was no rhythm behind the motion. Its eyes, barely open, were dry at the corners. There had been no first stand, no rooting for milk, no searching trunk from mother to child. Only stillness. Caleb crouched slowly beside the pair, lowering himself until his boots pressed firm into the soil. The silence held around them. Nyoka had not moved either. Her breath came shallower now, the rise and fall of her chest growing slower with each passing minute. But her eyes remained fixed on the calf. Not panicked, not fading, just steady. She had carried him here. Whatever strength she had left had been spent getting them this far. The others watched from the tree line, hands still, voices silent. Toma held the hydration cloth, now warmed by the fading light. The decision to intervene had not yet been made. Caleb reached forward with care, stopping just short of the calf's front leg. No reaction, no recoil. He touched the skin gently. It was cooler than it should have been. Not yet dangerous, but close. The calf let out a sound. It wasn't a cry, just a soft, breathy push of air, almost like a sigh. Then stillness again. Nyoka shifted her trunk, only slightly, drawing it closer to her calf's flank. Her breath quickened for a moment, then slowed again. It was a gesture of presence, not fear. She was still here. That was all she could give now. Caleb whispered, "It's okay, little one." The cloth was passed forward. Warm, soaked, held low to avoid sudden movement. Caleb pressed it gently against the calf's mouth and chest, coaxing moisture across the skin. Then into the corner of the lips. He moved slowly, repeating the motion, letting the cloth do what Nyoka's body no longer could. The calf did not resist, but it did not respond. If hydration didn't begin soon, organ shutdown would follow. If circulation slowed any further, the calf would fall beneath the recovery line. If they acted too late, nothing could reverse it. Caleb felt the breath again. A shallow inhale, then pause. Then another. Longer. He moved the cloth again, now tracing the length of the neck and over the side of the head. Nyoka stirred. Her eyes blinked once, then opened wider. A soft rumble moved through her chest, more vibration than sound. Her trunk uncurled slightly, then fell still. The calf's leg twitched again. This time the motion was stronger. Not random, an attempt. Caleb paused, his hands held steady. The cloth resting now against the shoulder. Another breath. This one deeper. Then a sound, soft and broken but present. A low, hoarse squeak, weak but alive. Toma stepped closer. Caleb raised one hand. Not yet. The calf moved again, this time with effort. The front leg extended, scraping slightly in the dust. The head lifted, fell, then lifted again. Still no standing, no reaching for milk, but the stillness had shifted. Nyoka closed her eyes, not in defeat, in relief. Her body had brought him here, the only place she had ever survived, and now her part was ending. The calf's chest rose again, now steady. Caleb leaned back, giving it space. The sun dropped lower, washing them in the last light of gold. Grass bent gently under the breeze near the river. The dust rose and fell. One breath, then another. Then stillness, not of loss, but of rest. On the third morning, the wind had shifted. It carried a cooler weight, brushing the dry grasses flat before rising again over the hill. Nyoka had not stood. Her strength had not returned, but her breath remained even, and the swelling along her side had begun to ease. The calf, though unsteady, now lifted its head with each hour and turned toward the soft bowl of water Caleb placed near its flank. It had not suckled, but it had nuzzled. That, for now, was enough. The field remained quiet. No herds had crossed since the night before. The rangers worked in silence, rotating watch, mixing hydration formula, clearing brush to keep the air moving. No one spoke unless necessary. The calf had begun to sleep in short bursts, legs tucked and eyes half closed, always pressed close to Nyoka's belly. It was mid-morning when the birds fell silent. A light hush rolled across the plain, not sudden but strange. Toma was first to look up, scanning the far rise where the soil bent into a long slope. There, at the crest, a single elephant appeared. She moved slowly, not in pain, but with the deep, deliberate caution of age or survival. Her skin was marked, deep scoring across her shoulder, a torn ear. Her frame was lean, the bones of her hips visible through the folds. She moved with familiarity, though no record had shown her nearby in weeks. Caleb stepped into the open, keeping his body loose, arms down. The others paused their work. The wind shifted again. The elephant stopped once, nostrils lifting, trunk rising in the direction of the resting pair. Then she descended the slope, not quickly, but with purpose. Nyoka raised her head. Not sharply, slowly. Her trunk did not lift, but her eyes tracked the shape approaching. She did not stand. She did not retreat. The stranger reached the edge of the clearing. She paused, then moved again. Her path was curved, respectful. She did not walk toward the rangers. She walked directly to the calf. The rangers did not move. Caleb's breath held still. If she charged, no one could stop her in time. If she took the calf, Nyoka could not follow. The calf could not run. But she didn't threaten. She reached the calf's side, lowered her trunk, and touched its back once. Not a sweep, not a lift, just one press of contact, firm and steady. The calf blinked and turned. Its ears lifted slightly, then dropped. It did not cry out. The stranger lowered her head. Her trunk slid across the calf's neck, then stopped. Nyoka breathed deeper now. Still on her side, her chest moved in longer, slower waves. Her eyes didn't close. She didn't intervene. There was no sound. Caleb didn't speak. No one did. The stranger backed one step, then another. She turned, began walking a slow arc around the pair, circling them once in a wide, deliberate loop. Her head remained low. When she passed behind Nyoka, she paused again, just for a moment, before continuing her circle. When she completed the loop, she stood still. Then she looked toward the hills, and waited. What had drawn her, no one knew. She bore no marks of dominance, no scent of family. She did not call or lead, but she stayed. The calf shifted again. Two legs pressed beneath its body now, its neck rising straighter. Nyoka did not move, but her breath deepened. The stranger remained silent. And in the distance, somewhere beyond the acacia ridge, a low reply sounded. Faint, but carried by wind. Caleb lowered his hand. The others stepped back. The herd had heard, and they were coming. The ground had softened slightly overnight. A thin film of dew clung to the grass just past the clearing, catching the early light in small silver threads. Nyoka had not moved far, but her posture had changed. She now lay angled toward the open plain, not curled inward, and her breathing had steadied into longer, slower waves. Her eyes remained half-lidded, not in sleep, but in rest. The calf was awake. It shifted first at the shoulders, then slowly brought its legs beneath its body. For a long moment it stayed there, knees bent, head low, testing weight without rising. Then, with a quiet grunt and one stagger forward, it lifted. The motion wasn't clean. Its balance faltered, but it stood. The stranger, still unnamed, still silent, remained beside it. She had not left since arriving. Through the heat of the day, through the soft noise of insects and the settling of the dust, she had kept her place within a few steps. Sometimes she would circle, sometimes she would pause and breathe in the direction of the calf, as if marking scent or reading something beneath the skin. Da'ari had arrived before dawn. Not as a replacement, but to relieve Caleb. He approached slowly, carrying only a shallow dish and the last mix of formula. He watched the calf stand fully for the first time, legs trembling, ears twitching toward the wind. The moment held stillness but no celebration, only observation. Nyoka lifted her head. Her trunk reached across the soil once, brushing gently against the calf's hind leg. It turned slightly at the touch, wobbling, but it didn't fall. Its stance widened, held. Dari crouched. He didn't call out. He placed the dish on the ground, a few feet from the pair, and stepped back. The calf looked toward him, then toward the stranger, then back again. It took one step, then another. Slow, measured, unsteady. The female did not intervene. When the calf reached the edge of the dish, it sniffed, paused, then lowered its mouth toward the fluid. The sip was small. It dripped more than it swallowed, but it drank. Dari whispered, "That's enough, boy." He stood and moved away. His hands stayed low. The moment did not need witness. The calf backed from the dish and turned. It walked in a loose arc, circling once, then stopping near Nyoka's front leg. Her trunk reached again, this time upward, touching the base of its chest. A pause. Then she let it go. The stranger stepped forward. She brushed against Nyoka gently, shoulder to shoulder. Not forceful, not hesitant. A breath passed between them. No sound, just air shared and let go. Nyoka did not rise. The calf turned once more and began to follow. The stranger moved ahead. Her pace was slow, careful, pausing every few steps. She didn't call. She didn't wait. She only moved into the open, never glancing behind. And the calf followed. No herd arrived, no trumpets sounded. Just the two of them, one scarred, one new, walking slowly into the sun-warmed plain. Nyoka watched. Her eyes were steady. Dari stopped at the fence line. He did not step closer. There was nothing left to do, nothing to carry. The wind moved gently through the grass. A low rustle passed beneath the acacia. The two shapes grew smaller, heading east, not into forest, but into the light.